Hello everyone, just putting the finishing touches on my latest line of miniatures. Got the Armageddon Steel Legion. Came out better than I thought it would. I'm new at this, don't judge me. Any case, this is a response video to Shad of Shadversity. Shad, if you're watching this, I'm a big fan of your work. Always informative, always entertaining. Keep it up, the good work. Honestly, it's fantastic. I look forward to seeing new videos coming out from you. Specifically, this is a response video to your video that you did recently about the different fantasy races and what weapons and armor and equipment they would use. Specifically, the video about the Dwarves. As someone who's on the shorter side, somewhat ill-tempered, I find the Dwarves to be my favorite fantasy race, so here we are. Now, I agree totally with everything you said in that video. There's nothing specifically with what you said that I have any particular problems with, but with a slight caveat. Now, I'm going to be speaking in very broad terms here. Dwarves do change slightly from franchise to franchise, whether we're talking Lord of the Rings, Dungeons and Dragons, Dragon Age, Warhammer, not Age of Sigmar. We're going to pretend, everybody, we're just going to pretend that Age of Sigmar never happened. Small aside here. Games Workshop. When you want to advance the plot of your world, can you please not blow stuff up? Seriously, you have, the Warhammer world. You want to advance the plot line after 20-something years. What do? You blow it up, and now we have Age of Sigmar. Now you want to advance the 40k storyline. What do? You take Cadia, and you blow it up. As a fan of the Imperial Guard, that's kind of disconcerting to me. Okay? Seriously, you're going to blow up Krieg next? You're going to blow up Armageddon? Seriously, you're going to blow up, Fenris? Macragge? Actually, you know what? Go blow up Macragge. Nobody cares about those Ultra Smurfs anyway. I'm getting really off topic. Anyway, so I'm going to be speaking very broad terms here. Now, I agree totally with what Shad said about missile weapons. Crossbows, honestly, would be much more suited for the Dwarves than bow and arrow or any other type of ranged weapon. Crossbows are perfect. Actually, I would also think early gunpowder weapons, which usually if gunpowder weapons do exist, usually the Dwarves are the ones that invented it. Works perfectly fine. Later on, with melee weapons, it was asserted that the Dwarves would be better suited with something like a halberd or a poleaxe, something that will help offset their natural disadvantage in reach. And yes, that is true, with a slight caveat. In real life, the ability to hurt that person, to reach out and hit that person before they can hit you, is vastly important, but with a slight caveat that first strike has to actually damage your opponent. A first strike that simply glances off or just bounces off an opponent or doesn't have any effect is next to useless. Now, if you look at most fantasy franchises, the Dwarves are almost always depicted as the most heavily armored race in whatever universe they happen to live in. Their metal crafting is almost always second to none. They make the finest weapons and armor and equipment. Now, compare that to who are they normally fighting against. You have races like goblins, orcs, Skaven. These are not races that possess high levels of metallurgy. So, dwarf equipment is almost always superior to their opponents. I mean, a goblin spear or a Skaven scimitar is just going to bounce right off a full dwarven plate. If Mithril or Grumnir or whatever it is. This actually compares very well to our world, where knights in plate armor in the later part of the Middle Ages would often have shorter weapons. They'd be wearing full plate, and they'd have poleaxes, or if they're using a one-handed weapon, something like a mace or a warhammer. Compare that to something that the lower classes would have, where they were only armed with, say, chainmail or brigandine or possibly just gambeson or an akatan. They would have a longer weapon, such as, say, a longsword, or a halberd, spear, a glaive, a pike even, possibly. So the knights in their full plate armor would take the hit. The completely viable strategy: move in, take the hit on the way in, watch the enemy's weapons just glance right off the armor, slide right off, because nothing's going through full plate, and then take the hit on the way in and deliver that one massive shot with a shorter weapon, so it offsets the range disadvantage with the fact that you're completely protected. The ability to reach out and hit somebody only counts so much as it actually can damage the opponent. If you can't damage your opponent, if you can't actually hurt the person, the ability to strike first is less than meaningless. Also, it was alluded to in the comments, which does make sense. Dwarves are in are almost universally from underground environments. In a tight, confined area, a long weapon's going to be more of a disadvantage, especially if you're in a formation with a bunch of other dwarves. You're going to be knocking into each other. Having a shorter weapon is actually more of an advantage in these tight, confined areas. Also, just as one further note, dwarves are very traditional. They're very conservative in their society. Their grandfather used an axe, their great-grandfather used an axe, their great-great-grandfather used an axe. Everybody uses axes and hammers. That's what we're going to use. It's always done that way. That's how it's going to be, even if it's detrimental to our society. Also, you have to understand, those are all really side objections to why dwarves you would use, say, an axe. The real reason is actually much simpler, but vastly more important. Outside of warfare, the axe is primarily used to fell trees. Who lives around trees? Elves. Elves suck. So that's just my thoughts on this. I hope you found this entertaining or at least somewhat informative. Shad, if you're watching this, thank you for putting out absolutely fantastic content, and look forward to seeing your next videos. And that's pretty much all I have to say about this. All right, see y'all later. Well, actually, now that I'm here, I do have one thing in that video that I don't agree with, and I know it was done as a joke, but there's this idea that you see a classic comedy thing where a shorter person's their head is being held and they're swinging, and yeah, that doesn't work in real life. As a shorter person who did martial arts, someone did that to me once. You're begging for a joint lock, followed by a head kick. It doesn't work out ever. So yeah, I know it was a joke, but just wanted to address that. As a shorter person, I just kind of had to address that point.